Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Noontime Knowledge Series for Penn State fundraising volunteers, presidential counselors, and donors. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rob Jackson. I'm an Assistant Vice President of Principal Gifts, and I will be your host this afternoon. I am looking forward to learning more about the newest addition to the Eric J. Barron Innovation Hub, OriginLabs, and I know this will be a wonderful program this afternoon. In a moment, I will introduce you to our guests, and after they've shared their remarks, we'll have a Q&A session with our presenters. And after they've shared their remarks, we'll have a Q&A session, and you can enter questions in the chat box at any time, and you can also use the raise your hand feature as well. We have two excellent speakers here today. Ryan Mandel joined Penn State in 2021 as the director of OriginLabs, a prototyping and product design facility serving entrepreneurs and startups from the university, local community, and beyond. Previously, he was the director of fabrication labs for the School of Art, Architecture, and Design at Indiana University. Ryan also served as a faculty member in sculpture at the University of North Texas, Boise State, and the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Welcome, Ryan. Bianca Weisskall is a rising third-year student at Penn State, pursuing a biomedical engineering degree and also a minor in innovation and entrepreneurship. She's currently the vice president of entrepreneurship and of the club, where she facilitates connections between the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Thank you for joining us, Bianca. Before we get started with our guest presentations, I'd like to share a few words about OriginLabs, our topic for today. As dedicated volunteers, you all know that our work as a land-grant university stretches across the Commonwealth and beyond. Since it was first launched in 2015, Invent Penn State has supported economic vitality across Pennsylvania by bringing space and resources to local entrepreneurs. Since then, Invent Penn State has expanded to 21 locations across the Commonwealth, supporting nearly 6,000 entrepreneurs and engaging 17,000 students and faculty. From metalworking to woodworking to painting and 3D modeling, the recently opened OriginLabs, the Eric J. Barron Innovation Hub in downtown State College, provides world-class prototyping facilities to students, faculty, and community members. We'll be talking today about how we build these creative spaces and how we can support these efforts in State College and across the state. It is my pleasure to introduce Ryan and to turn the floor over with him for a more in-depth look at the great work he's doing and the space as well. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to talk about OriginLabs today. It's obviously something that I care very deeply about and very passionate about, so I'm excited to share it with you. I think Rob did an excellent job of introducing us, so you already have a sense of who we are and where we come from, but I just wanted to say how excited I am to be back at Penn State. I rejoined Penn State about a year and a half ago now in this role as director of OriginLabs. I actually had the privilege of serving as a visiting assistant professor in sculpture at Penn State back in 2009, 2010, in my previous life as a faculty member in sculpture. Before I say any more, before I launch into my PowerPoint presentation about OriginLabs, I wanted to just hand it over to Bianca really briefly so she could introduce herself. We actually both come from South Florida, as it turns out. So I'm excited to learn more about Bianca. I actually just found that out right now. So I'll hand it over to Bianca to say hello real quickly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bianca Weisskall. I'm a third-year student here at Penn State. I come from Southeast Florida. When I was in high school, I was working in a shop on a robotics team. So that was my first shop that I'd worked in, and it had given me the ability to prototype some ideas and bring them to Penn State, where ultimately I'm here working on some of the great ideas I've had for years now, and I'm excited to make them come to life. So, yeah.
Thanks, Bianca. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen at this point. Please let me know if you have any issue seeing it. There we go. Okay. Hopefully that looks okay to everyone. So as Rob said, today's presentation is about OriginLabs, and OriginLabs is a prototyping and product development facility. It is located in the brand new, well, not so brand new anymore, it's about a year old now, a little more than that. The Eric J. Barron Innovation Hub located in downtown State College. If you haven't already, I invite you to come down and check out OriginLabs, check out the building. It's really a beautiful space. It's an honor and a privilege to work in the building. We're really excited about the resource that we have in this building. Our mission, in a nutshell, and really this is the raison d'etre for Origin Labs, was to provide the tools, technology, and expertise that entrepreneurs and startups need to make their product-based business ideas a reality. We have a pipeline that's producing entrepreneurs and startups through Invent Penn State, and that's an initiative that many of you are probably familiar with. But essentially, in a nutshell, it's an initiative that's meant to leverage the university's resources and expertise to drive economic development across the Commonwealth. One thing that was happening really successfully was business consultation and free law clinics. And so young entrepreneurs and startups were being supported in that way. But the realization was that there was a kind of hole where the needs of individuals with product-based ideas was not really easily and directly being met. So when we had the opportunity to build the Eric J. Barron Innovation Hub, about 7,000 square feet of that space was dedicated to these prototyping facilities. And that was the point at which I was hired to design, stand up, and direct this space. So who is our customer base really? Well, as I just said, entrepreneurs and startups, they're a key part of the constituency, but I felt really strongly that given the resources and the space that we have, there was a lot more that we could do. There was a much bigger population we could serve. We're open to the general public, which is really an important key fact about us that really differentiates us from other facilities on campus. But given the resources that we have, I felt we could also support faculty research, specifically for faculty and academic units that are not necessarily facilities rich. So if you think about engineering, for instance, they have fantastic facilities. They're very easily able to support the production activities that are associated with the research happening there. However, other disciplines, some of which are actually quite surprising, like astrophysics, for instance, has already approached us about using our facilities in order to support their research. Other areas like the arts, architecture, theater, these are partnerships that we're already beginning to build with units that can use the tool sets and the expertise that we have to support the research that they're already doing in their areas. In addition to that, we look forward to supporting small and medium-sized businesses in the region. So let's say that you're a local manufacturer and you're interested in exploring a new product line, but you don't necessarily have the bandwidth, either in terms of space or equipment or personnel, to go out on a limb and try something new. We're hoping that that R&D, that explorative work can be outsourced to us, and we can help young companies or small companies branch out, become more productive, more efficient. Another thing I'm really excited about is helping members of the regional workforce to upskill or reskill for more advanced manufacturing related or tech related employment. This is something that we're going to get into heavily thanks to funding from the Appalachian Regional Commission and the Department of Education. And I'm going to talk about that in more depth in just a minute. But really, this last bullet point is key for me personally, having a background in arts. I firmly believe that anyone who wants to learn a new skill or wants to make something with their own two hands really should be supported in that activity, because it's such an empowering activity to master a skill, or not even necessarily to master it, but to feel competency and to bring something into reality, from idea to reality. It's such an amazing and empowering experience to have, and we want to be a place that supports that activity in the most general sense possible. So how might you engage with Origin Labs if you were interested? Well, there's two primary pathways. The first is a sort of makerspace model, and this is a word a lot of people are probably familiar with, where you're coming into an environment, you're receiving training on tools and techniques, and then you're being very hands-on and you're making something yourself after receiving the appropriate safety training, technical training. In this instance, you'd always be supervised, and our staff, such as Bianca, would always be present to provide advice and assistance whenever it's needed. There is a monthly membership cost associated with a makerspace membership if you want to be hands-on and produce your own prototypes. On the other hand, we also have a service bureau model. So this would be for people that are entrepreneurially minded, but don't necessarily have the time or the inclination to learn the technical skills that they need in order to produce the prototype that they want. So in that instance, we can be contracted to produce a prototype or a model on your behalf. So the way that that would work is that you would make a reservation for a consultation. You'd come in and meet with our staff to discuss your project parameters. And then we would be able to undertake design. That could include computer-assisted drafting, computer-assisted machining. We can fabricate the part, and that's all done at an hourly rate. And you'd be provided an estimate of exactly what this service would cost at the outset, and you can either consent or not. We do set you up as a member, but it's a no-cost membership. And that's really just to get you into our system so that we can track the fact that we have a relationship with you. And truthfully, there's really a third way that you can engage, and that's as a kind of tourist, just taking advantage of all of our free services. We offer free tours. Those are hour-long tours of our facilities and really of the entire building. If you have the time, we'll show you the whole building if you're interested. We will do 1 hour-long consultations for free. So if you have an idea and you want to explore whether or not it's viable or what the next steps might be, if you wanted to bring it into reality, we're happy to always discuss that. Our tool trainings are entirely free. So I mentioned earlier, the makerspace model, you have to undergo these trainings in order to be able to use the tools hands-on. Well, all of those trainings on all of our tools are entirely free. You don't necessarily have to follow that up by getting a makerspace membership. So just for pure interest, if you wanted to know how the table saw worked and you wanted to just get some hands-on experience with it, you could come in and do that, and that would be entirely free. Most exciting, though, are the workshops that we're going to be offering. And these are a longer duration workshop that are funded through the Appalachian Regional Commission, the Department of Education, and we're looking for ongoing funding to continue this activity. But these are longer format workshops that get into advanced technologies. They're entirely free and they're geared to the absolute novice. And I want to emphasize that about all of our services is that we don't assume pre-existing knowledge about any of the tools, any of the technologies, any of the techniques. We really teach to the absolute novice, the absolute beginner, because we don't want anyone to feel like they're being excluded from this opportunity. I'm going to talk more about exactly what those workshops are in just a minute. Oh, as it turns out, the next slide. All right. So the primary program that I'm really most excited about is RAMP, which it stands for Realizing Automated and Advanced Manufacturing Processes. This is workforce development training that's being funded by the Appalachian Regional Commission, and it is supporting 4 primary avenues: collaborative robotics and automation, additive manufacturing or 3D printing, and 3D laser scanning, and CNC metal fabrication. And so with this funding, we were able to purchase key pieces of equipment that are being used in industry today, and to design a series of free workshops that are going to take place over the next 2.5 years in order to be able to introduce folks who are interested in these technologies, whether it's purely just from an interest standpoint, if you're looking for employment, if you're considering a career trajectory or education trajectory. This is a great first step into understanding how these technologies work. So what does the space actually look like? Well, as I said, it's about 7,000 square feet. And what we've done is to look really closely at the existing ecosystem. So what tools and equipment already exist on campus and who has access to them? What tools and equipment exist in the community and who has access to those? And I've really made a concerted effort to try to eliminate redundancy whenever possible, to bring a high caliber tool set that might not otherwise be available to a user base, and to really think about how we can create mutually beneficial relationships with other entities, both on campus and in the community. And so engineering, the arts, these are partners that are really important to us. The Rivet, which is the local makerspace in State College, is a really strong partner. They actually are a partner with us on the ARC workshop programming. So really thinking about how we can, being the new player in town, how can we be a positive force that's helping to build everyone else up and not create a competitive or an antagonistic relationship. So this is our Woodworking Lab. This is a beautiful, really inspirational space, really high bay space, lots of windows, natural light. We've got world-class equipment from multiple manufacturers in this space. Immediately adjoining that space is our Metalworking Lab and Welding Lab. All of our welding equipment was generously sponsored by Lincoln Electric. Really much nicer equipment than I learned on or ever used in my career, so I'm really thrilled about those facilities. Here we have an emphasis on sheet metal fabrication because this was a kind of gap that I saw elsewhere on campus and in the community. In the front of the house, facing Burroughs Street, is our Benchworking Lab. You can see in the top left image here, it's being used modestly during the day and then packed to the gills at night, just below that. Bianca is actually in that image there in the bottom. This space is a kind of flexible classroom space where we can deliver workshop programming. It also houses our really high-end, high-quality hand tools and cordless power tools. We're partially supported by Makita USA for our cordless tools. So you can do, really sophisticated finishing of hand-built objects, or you can do very rudimentary first draft prototyping, like you see in this image with the hot glue and uncooked spaghetti. Really anything is possible here. Up on the mezzanine level, we have our Additive Manufacturing Lab. This is essentially our 3D printing lab. I saw in surveying the existing resources, I saw that there was a kind of a middle section. If you look at 3D printing technologies from intro level or hobbyist level to industrial, there's a middle section that really wasn't very well represented in the State College region. And so that's the section that we've tried to occupy. And so we have SLA technology, which allows a customer to print in a broad array of different photoreactive plastics that have different engineering grade properties. We can do things that are flexible, elastic, things that withstand high heat, really kind of any property that you want to achieve, we can meet with these printers. We also have a full color polyjet printer, so we can print in any color in the Pantone color library. We can print full color models that are captured from scan data, so we can do photorealistic copies. We lovingly refer to this printer as the pizza printer because we have a lifelike slice of pizza that we printed off of it that fools people all the time. We can do things like this really detailed medical model that you see in the bottom right. We also have an exact metal stainless steel printer that we've just onboarded. So we're able to print robust end use parts in stainless steel. And Exact Metal is a local company actually out at Innovation Park. So it's nice to form a relationship with a local company. Also on the mezzanine is our rapid prototyping and design lab. We have some small scale CNC milling equipment. We have our laser engravers. Actually, Bianca is sitting in that room. If she wants to lift her laptop up, you can kind of get another view of it there. Really nice space, windows overlooking the Woodworking Lab and out onto the street, onto Burroughs Street. So a really interesting dynamic space to work in, outfitted with some really great equipment. In this case, you'll notice the laser engravers are by Trotec. We picked those specifically because they're the same type being used by the rivet maker space, and that will allow us to ensure that our trainings and our safety and operations procedures are identical so that users can move seamlessly back and forth between both spaces. We also have electronics prototyping in this space. And then finally on the mezzanine is our lab called The Cave, which is really just a very nondescript small scale computer lab, but it's critical because it allows us to deliver workshop programming on software competency, so 3D modeling software. And it's also the space that we're going to be delivering workshop content about our collaborative robotic arms, which are pictured here in the middle, and our laser scanning equipment. All of that programming will be done from that space. So we've tried to emphasize breadth and high quality. So everywhere possible, we've gotten the best equipment that our budgets could afford. And we've tried to cover as many bases as possible because entrepreneurial activity and creative activity, there's really no way to anticipate what a customer is going to need. And so we want to just be ready for as much as possible and be able to support the greatest breadth of activity possible. So how can you get involved? Well, as I mentioned, we have all these great free services. So please feel free to take advantage of them. If you're interested in a tour, we're happy to give you a tour. If you'd like a consultation, feel free to come by for a consultation. And again, the workshops, I think this is really a tremendous asset that we're able to deliver these workshops with the gracious funding that we've received up to this point. And then finally, another great way to get involved would be to make a donation. So as I mentioned, we do have really great support from vendors that have donated us equipment, from entities like the ARC and the Department of Education. But if you'll remember, our makerspace model, it still does require us to charge a monthly membership fee for access to the space. And that's really what I'm kind of making a plea for right now, is to help us offset the cost of membership for students, young entrepreneurs from the community, essentially anyone who could benefit from access to this space, but can't necessarily afford the membership fee. Through donations, we can create a pot of money that we're able to offset the cost of membership for as many people as possible. And I'm really excited about trying to make a space that's as inclusive and inviting and barrier-free as possible. And, sadly, there's still a lot of work to be done in order to get more women into technical environments like this, getting more people of color, more gender non-conforming people. These are still largely spaces that are dominated by a very small percentage of the population. So one of the ways that we can open that up is by breaking down as many barriers as possible. And one of those is cost. So we appreciate donations at any level. And again, they would be used to offset the cost of membership for essentially anyone who wants access to the space, but can't achieve it or can't afford it. So thank you in advance for your consideration. I'm happy to field any questions that you have at any time, of course, beyond the duration of this event. If you'd ever like to email, I'm always happy to answer emails. If you want to come by and get a tour, we would love to see you. And so I'll leave it there. I'd like to, maybe pose a question to Bianca, just to sort of get the conversation going. Bianca mentioned that she's an engineering student. I wonder, Bianca, if you could talk a little bit about how the experience of working in OriginLabs, both using it for your own research, but also as an employee, as a technician, how that's complemented your engineering education.
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout my time as a student in the College of Engineering, I have been asked to participate in classes where I actually have to produce a product. I have to build something, use some high-tech equipment. So it has given me the opportunity to learn more machines and be comfortable with a lot of different mediums. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about this space is actually the Exact Metal machine. That was a company that I have been looking at and was potentially going to take a job from for the past 2 years, because it is a new up-and-coming high-powered machine, which is awesome. But this space had one, and I thought I would get more value throughout my education, throughout my personal projects in this space, because I'm able to experiment with the different kinds of machines and get trained so that I can take this and further my career as an entrepreneur who's willing to make things for myself and other people.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Rob, I don't know if you had any questions for Bianca, or if I should keep antagonizing Bianca.
Well, thanks, Ryan. And obviously, we appreciate this very informative, great presentation by you and Bianca. And I guess when you were talking earlier, obviously, Ryan, you mentioned resources. Some of them are very technical and so on, others that are also deeply creative. Can you talk a little bit about that and just sort of how they represent the art and science and different things as it relates to bringing ideas to life and so forth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So one of the things that really drew me to this role, as you mentioned, I was previously the director of fabrication labs for a School of Art, Architecture, and Design at Indiana University. And one of the struggles that I faced in that role was that I was decidedly in a single school. And even though creative activity that happens in the arts and architecture and design is very broad, it's still somewhat limited when you think about the kind of activity happening on a world-class R1 campus like Penn State. So when this job was posted and I realized that it's under the Office of the Senior Vice President for Research and that it's central and inherently it calls upon cross-disciplinarity, that was really exciting for me. And so that was one of the key things that drove me to take the position, was the realization that I was going to be able to combine research activity happening in places like the sciences with the research activity happening in the arts. And the really fascinating thing to me is that a lot of researchers in those seemingly really disparate fields are using the same tool sets, but to totally different ends. And so when you get folks in the same space, working side by side on projects that don't necessarily on the surface seem like they have a relationship, through that sustained contact and through the shared use of a single tool set, you find parallels and you find meeting points. And to me, that's the most exciting moment, is when those synergies emerge. And that kind of cross-disciplinary activity is really, I think, where innovation is really born from. So I find that tremendously exciting. And we're seeing that kind of interesting cross-section of the entire university population and the community already happening, even though we really only opened our doors in March. So I'm excited for what's to come.
Thank you, Ryan. And Bianca, how has OriginLabs influenced your studies and just sort of your experience as a Penn Stater? Obviously, a lot of students have interest. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So being an engineering student, I have a lot of classes that are more math and physics or math and science, and I have classes that are more hands-on. So by me being trained in some of these machines, I'm already 2 steps ahead of my fellow classmates, because in classes where I actually have to prototype something, I don't need to go through the shop trainings. I have a plan in my head that, oh, I'm trained in the saws, the machinery, so I can use these to benefit my studies, not just my personal gain. I can take what I've learned here and implement it towards my classes, so that I'm not just benefiting, my whole group is benefiting as well. And then I can help my fellow students learn more information and hopefully bring them into this shop as well.
Thank you, Bianca. And I see a question in the chat from Sarah. And she asked, how does this coordinate with the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, or does it? Are items available for purchase? If so, how? And if so, I'm really interested in the sheet that's being carved in the woodworking shop. I saw it yesterday when she was there for a meeting rather. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Ryan, as well?
Sure. Yeah, let me bring the question up so that I can try and answer all of the points of the question. So there was a first question about a map of other innovation centers in Pennsylvania. I think probably the best place to go for that information would be the Invent Penn State website. You'll be able to see all of the launch boxes in the Launchbox network. Many of those launch boxes also have a makerspace component or some kind of fabrication component, though not all do. If that doesn't answer your question, go into that site, feel free to email me and we can go into more depth on that. In terms of our relationship with Ben Franklin Technology, I would say that is a relationship that is still at the very early stages. They were a supporter and a letter of support writer for our ARC grant that we received, which is funding all of this great workshop programming. So we do have a connection with Ben Franklin. We're still learning the nuances of how we can best support each other, but we're excited about that. Let's see. So items available for purchase. Yes, that's something that I hope over the next year we'll be able to fully roll that out. We have another space on the 2nd floor of the Innovation Hub, which we've already called the store. We will sell consumables out of that space at cost, so there won't be any markup. The idea being that you can walk into the space, have an idea, be able to source the materials on site, get on the machine and get working very quickly. So that is the goal, is to have a fully functional store that provides a lot of the really common consumables that you might want.
Thank you, Ryan. And I see a question about the size of a donation that is needed to offset the cost of a membership fee. And I think about that. I say, well, the larger the better. We'd be delighted to have $2 million for that, but obviously, if you have any thoughts about that, then second part of that, as you probably see, is how many memberships do you currently have? Yeah,
so the number of memberships that we currently have, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would say it's still quite low at this point. I would say we're probably only in the 20s or so right now. We kind of got off the ground right before summer break started, and people were gearing up for finals, so we don't have much of a university constituency yet. The ARC programming has with it the built-in benefit of including a year's membership. So at the conclusion of each year of ARC programming, we'll accrue another 80 members. So after the 2nd year, we should be over 200 members. We can't really control how active those members are, how many times they're coming in. But we have all kinds of activities that are non-member related happening in the space. We're supporting work by the Entrepreneurship and Innovation minor. Arts classes are starting to come in and take advantage of our facilities. So it's a busy space. So membership count isn't really a great indication of how busy we are yet, but the membership numbers are going to continue to climb. In terms of the cost, right now we've set it at $65 a month, and it's month to month. So if you were to make a donation of less than $800, you could support one person for an entire year. The reason we went with $65 is because it is the deluxe membership cost for the rivet, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't cannibalizing the rivets population by undercutting them price-wise. So that's where we've come up with the $65 a month.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ryan. One thought I had is how can, since we do have some volunteers and donors and so on this Zoom, how can they get involved in sort of a way, perhaps outside of maybe donating? Are there opportunities for them to lend their expertise, experiences, et cetera, to your efforts and Bianca's?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think becoming a technician is another opportunity to be involved. If you have time, but not necessarily money, I think there would be an opportunity to volunteer your time as a technician. You'd come in and you would be trained by our shop manager, Jose, and our senior technicians like Bianca on the equipment. So you'd learn some really great proficiencies, and you'd be able to support the other customers that are coming in and needing assistance and guidance on the equipment.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And Bianca, I was sort of thinking about your work and how that sort of, in many ways correlates with what you're doing in engineering, but how has sort of this experience, benefited for you in terms of the classroom? I mean, has it been, of interest to other classmates and so on? I mean, how has it kind of intersected with what you're learning in your engineering major here at Penn State?
Yeah, I would say some things align and some things I have just totally gained a new skill. So an event that we run relatively often is a keychain event where we would cut them on the CNCs behind me. You make a custom keychain. So I am using the skills that I've seen some of my classes use that I haven't been able to. So for one of my classes, they had given us all keychains for participating, and I got to make my own. And I actually went back to that teacher who I think of as a mentor, and I made her one, just to kind of show a full circle moment of, hey, I can do this stuff now. I am gaining new skills. I'm learning how to use these machines, and it's been really awesome because sometimes classes will let you talk about yourself for a couple minutes. I'm also the club vice president, so I typically ask my professors for a couple minutes to talk about it, and I always try and promote this space because it is just an awesome resource for any kind of student, not necessarily just an engineering student.
Yeah, thank you, Bianca. And I see there's a question in the chat about any plans for OriginLabs at campuses that have lunch boxes. Ryan, do you want to talk a little bit about that maybe?
Yeah, I think in our end game for world domination, I think that would be great if we could eventually build OriginLabs at each of the launch boxes. It'll really largely depend on space and funding, and also an acknowledgement that every community is different, and so these are more or less necessary depending on which community that you're in. And that's one of the really great things about the launch boxes themselves, is that they're really catered to the needs of the communities that they serve. So we have to look very carefully at whether or not an OriginLabs makes sense in that community, or if that community is already, potentially saturated with related resources. But certainly that's something that we'll look at is building out this idea across other locations.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Bianca, did you have some thoughts on that as well too?
So actually Sarah had sent me a question. She had said, Bianca, if you can, if this is still available, can you show us some things that are being made? So Ryan had mentioned the pizza printer. So that was the first thing that I had thought of, but this is the space, the table where we keep a lot of our prototypes. So this is the pizza. It is a 3D printed piece. It is awesome. And if you just look at it, it looks exactly like a piece of pizza. And so if we go through some of our other things, this is the exact metal prototype that Ryan had showed in his presentation. So this is made out of metal, very cool. And then this is a piece to a blow dryer. So this would be made out of the heat resistant plastic. So if things break, you need something else, you have those things. And then our malleable filament. So these can be molded into different shapes, and then it will go back to its original shape once that has happened. And there is a bunch of different cool things that you can do with all of these machines here. And I don't think we have anything. We have some things over here from the CNC machine. This is one of my favorites. I think this is awesome. So this was cut out of wood on our Trotec machines. We've got a couple puzzle pieces. And just some other examples. And
yeah, one other thing, Bianca, that I could have jumped in to mention in the additive lab, I don't think we have them anymore because we delivered them, but we assisted on a theatrical production run through the Department of Theater. They contacted us about producing some props for one of their productions, and we worked with them to 3D design a like a family crest, basically, and then 3D print it, and they embedded it on some custom furniture that they had constructed in-house in their shop. And so that was actually part of a production recently. So there's really interesting opportunities to support other academic and research activity on campus. And that's just one that comes to mind after seeing some of the 3D prints that Bianca just pointed out.
Well, thank you, Bianca. I was very happy to see that slice of pizza. It made me rethink what I brought for lunch today, but hopefully I'll have an opportunity to enjoy some pizza later. But, you know, as Ryan just mentioned, you know, one of the great things about Penn State is our interdisciplinary strengths. And it's wonderful that, you know, Ryan and Bianca and all those who work in this space can help theater studies, musical theater, et cetera, whatever it might be, because, you know, we do have that opportunity to support different programs and so on. You know, as it relates to sort of just, you know, some of the community members, Ryan, I mean, have you had, you know, local businesses, other folks from the community? Obviously, we're delighted, you know, that it exists here, there, J. Barron Innovation Hub, but have you had some strong interest in the community, just in terms of people walking in, volunteers, just interested parties, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. We get more and more tours every week as people learn about the space. Had some interesting discussions with local business owners about potential needs that we may be able to fill. I won't get into sharing names or real specifics because I'm not sure if they'd be comfortable with that, but we've talked with folks about warehousing activities, about doing custom packaging, about automating certain elements of their processes. Some of our partners on the grants that we've applied for are interested in us receiving the grant because they have a vested interest personally in learning more about the technology to assist in their research and production. So there's a really great buzz and energy, and every day we get approached by new folks that have needs that I could never have really even anticipated. It's amazing the breadth of activity that's happening in the Center County region.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I see a question about intellectual property concerns. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm so glad that came up because that's a thing that's really important to us, which is we have a very firm rule that we don't take any stake whatsoever in an individual's intellectual property. So you can come in knowing that you're being supported, and we're not attempting to take any stake of ownership or take any rights at all from you in terms of the intellectual property that you bring. So I think that's also a real service that we provide, really, that we don't try to take a stake at all. I wanted to mention too, Heather said something to me earlier about talking about the breadth of the activity that we do in the building and also as OriginLabs, some of the cross-disciplinarity. One of the exciting things that we're just getting off the ground is an artist in residence program, and we're looking to partner with all of the arts disciplines on campus on this, obviously because we can leverage their expertise, but also to make it the most robust program possible. We have a really generous gift from Dr. Kiko Ross that's helping to support this artist in residence program. But basically what we'll be doing is in perpetuity, we'll have a program whereby we bring in renowned artists that have some kind of intersection with innovation and entrepreneurship. So thinking about the synthesis of creative activity and entrepreneurship, we'll be providing monetary support to the selected artist through the Ross Endowment. And then we also will provide full access to OriginLabs as a fabrication facility for those artists. And then we're looking at partnering with community organizations like 3 Dots. Some of you may be familiar with them. Also the Rivet. And then, as I mentioned, the arts disciplines on campus, so that we can really provide the most robust package of support and hopefully the most compelling reason for a really world-class artist to come to State College and do a residency. So we're excited about the way that we're able to leverage the resources we have to do some really kind of off the beaten path things.
That's great, Ryan. And do you want to talk about maybe sort of business ideas and products? I know one of the wonderful things about, Invent Penn State and programs you both work with and within, you can come in with an idea and you can say, hey, I have this idea for business. I need some support, some help, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how many people might walk in with that idea, students, et cetera? What's that look like for you all?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the really exciting thing about the Eric J. Barron Innovation Hub as it stands now is that it's really a one-stop shop. We have pretty much every resource an individual could want or need if they're trying to get a business idea off the ground. And it could be a napkin sketch. You could have a pretty well thought out business plan. You could come in with a physical object and not really know how to design a business entity. You might not know anything about licensing or setting up a partnership or protecting your intellectual property. We have resources that can help you do that. You might come in with a business plan but not know how to make the product that you need. With OriginLabs, we can provide that assistance. So through our law clinics, through the launch box and all the business consultation they provide, and now through OriginLabs with the physical prototyping, we really can meet an individual anywhere that they are in their process and help them move to that next step. And then, with our partnerships with people like the Small Business Development Centers and Ben Franklin, we can then also usher you along to the next step as well too. So it's really just an incredibly robust ecosystem of support, largely cost-free. And I think, with help from donors, we can make it really totally cost-free in the future. I'm optimistic that will be the case.
Yeah, no, I'm just so inspired personally by it, by, having the opportunity for students, community members to come in and get that advice, for no charge, and, having the expertise and so on across the Invent Penn State universe is just so wonderful. And Bianca, do you have any thoughts on that as well? I was so impressed. I guess it was about maybe 5 or 6 months ago, I heard a number of student pitches, and I was so impressed with what the students were working on and what they had to say and so on. And I guess it's pretty robust from the student standpoint. You probably have a lot of friends, including yourself, who have ideas for businesses.
Yeah, this building, not just OriginLabs, but the whole building is honestly such an amazing resource for student entrepreneurs in the community. I have a lot of friends who are in this building from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. They choose to be here. They choose to do all of their work here because not only are the facilities great, the people are amazing here. Everybody is really nice. And with them being nice, you want to work here. You want to submit projects. You want to build things. So it's really awesome being able to see some of my friends build these projects, go through the programs, because then I can continuously tell people how great these programs are. I've been working with this building for over a year now. So it's just been great seeing how everybody is growing, what's coming out of this amazing resource, and how it's helping me grow as a person as well.
Absolutely. I've seen some incredible ideas, and the passion with which these students communicate their business plans and ideas is truly extraordinary and inspirational. And you think, okay, that's going to be the next, Fortune 500 company in another 15 or 20 years or so. And I like what you said too, Ryan, about no matter what stage you are in your business plan or idea, there's support, because I think people are often surprised to hear that. And again, the fact that there's no charge, that you are able to work with students and Bianca and so on, and provide that expertise and advice. Now, as it relates to sort of, the community, we talked a little bit about just some people coming in, but I think there's been a lot of energy in State College and a desire, for more engagement. Do you see, people coming from the other Commonwealth campuses visiting sometimes as well? I know you just talked about some of the local visitors, but have you had any visitors from the Commonwealth campuses and other students from, say, Altoona or Barron, et cetera?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just recently we had, back in March, we did Startup Week, which is one of our real key events. There's a really specific and special contingent of that event that brings in students from Commonwealth campuses for a few days of events. And there's a whole network of events that happens. Most are in person in State College, but many of them happen virtually at the other campuses. And so we had the pleasure of working with a few of the Commonwealth students that came into town. We ran a event called robotic welding, or welding with a robot, and we used one of the collaborative robotic arms as a welder's helper to hold these steel rods while the participant welded them together. And it was a lot of fun, and we had a few Commonwealth students jump into that event and really enjoyed it. And yeah, it's just a pleasure to get the students involved, but also as a staff person, to network with other staff people on other campuses that are doing really important work, that have laid a foundation, or they're doing parallel things that I personally can learn from. We've made great connections with Barron, and with I have a great colleague in Reading. A lot of folks that we're in dialogue with New Kensington about what's going on at the Digital Foundry and at the Corner Launch Box there. So it's just really a tremendous network of people, both the staff and the students, that working together, we create this really fantastic web of resources that can be leveraged.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things the president is very committed to, in terms of just having the Commonwealth campuses and their ability to sort of offer the programming and so on that we offer here, and the Penn State ecosystem in general is just truly extraordinary. Bianca, what are your plans post-graduation? Obviously, you've been extraordinarily successful and amazing career as a student, but what are you sort of thinking as it relates to post-Penn State after your undergraduate studies?
Yeah, after I'm done with my undergraduate degree, I would love to be in a role like Ryan or Jose, where I am more in charge of an amazing facility like this. I truly do want to be a part of a job where I'm working with my hands, I'm impacting my community, and I get to be happy in it. I really enjoy building things, and I don't want to be stuck behind a desk doing data collection, which I know I could do, but I know that this is something that I truly do want to learn how to use these machines so that I can do them for potentially the rest of my career.
Well, that's great to hear, and we'd be happy to have you stay here in State College, post-undergraduate studies, and maybe perhaps work on a part-time graduate degree if you are so inclined. That's great. Yeah, certainly, I know there's been a lot of interest across the board. Now, as it relates to sort of, specific things, I mean, Ryan, obviously you talked about a number of areas that people can make a difference, and what would be your number one priority for funding if you had to sort of say, obviously there's the, fees and so forth, but memberships, but what would you say if you had to just kind of focus on one thing that would be your number one priority?
Yeah, it really is the memberships in my mind. Yeah, because we want to, again, it goes back to eliminating barriers for entry. I think we're so fortunate at Penn State to have the resources that we have, the tremendous support that we got from the Office of the Senior Vice President of Research in startup funding to begin outfitting the space. The momentum that showed, and that generated further interest from entities like the ARC and the Department of Education. Exciting work. It breeds energy and it breeds additional support, but we still have this barrier of having to recoup costs. And so if we could eliminate the membership fee and really make this a resource that people can just walk into, that to me would be a tremendous thing to achieve. And I think it is achievable. It's going to take sustained work over time. And as Origin Labs grows and our membership grows, it means that our fundraising attempts have to grow with it as well, so that we can match the need and the desire, which I'm sure is going to be high given the amazing resources that we have.
Yeah, no, I would agree wholeheartedly. I think, given the passion and interest in the community, and again, what, President Benaputi has talked about, and obviously before President Benaputi, President Barron and his vision for this years ago, we're so grateful to him as well for his leadership and success as a president here. And obviously we'd be delighted to secure more support for that membership fee and so forth. Other thoughts, Bianca, as relates to sort of, involvement and what you're working on? It was great to get that sort of tour. Actually, we didn't expect that. It's kind of been nice for some of the participants today to see the actual space and see, what you're working on and some of the results of the great work you're doing.
Yeah, I know that we all have our own projects that we want to build. A personal project that I really want to work on this summer is building a nice piece of furniture that I plan on keeping for like years in the woodworking shop for my plants, but a piece for a portfolio that I do want to build. So having different kinds of medium in that, woodworking, metalworking, using the CNC. So just overall, it's a well-rounded shop. There is anything you can build in here you can think of.
Yeah, I like that. It is amazing. You actually can, specifically design a piece of furniture that's custom made for you as well. What type is it? Is it table, chairs, or what are you thinking along those lines?
So I really want to build like a funky shelf. They're really expensive shelves. The ones that I were looking at were like $2,000, and I am not paying $2,000 for a shelf. So I'm like, I can do that. I know how to do that. So I got a summer project on my plate.
That's great. That's and it's nice because you can custom design it, and I suspect the accuracy and so on is so much better given the extraordinary facility we have there. You don't have the sort of mistakes that you might have in manufacturing you might have seen a while ago. Is that fair to say, Ryan, that precision design and so on, given the equipment, is just far better than what it would have been years ago? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the potential certainly is there. One thing that I think is interesting and that we still need to break down is the perception that the new technologies are kind of magical and that things are now easy, but there's still a high. And I'm not saying you're saying this, Rob, but I think it just gives me a great talking point, which is that proficiency and skill are still so critical in a day and age where we think of so many things being digital and quote unquote easier. And so I think coming in and having that real world experience where you learn what it takes to actually model something in 3 dimensions in a software, and you learn the workflow of preparing that for output on a machine, and you learn how to set up the machine and how to program the machine and safely operate the machine. These are all things that require a tremendous amount of skill and practice and perseverance. And those are skills that we need today. I think there's such a culture of immediate gratification and a kind of feeling that things should be easy and we expect things to be easy. But it's just truly still not the case, even with the technologies that we have. And so I think, coming in and slowing down and in a sense, kind of having a meditative experience where you engage with something in depth and you challenge yourself, you push yourself. I think that's just such a rewarding thing to go through. And you can do that. You can do that here with really world-class equipment.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ryan. And it's interesting to hear your comments about sort of just, having those skills. And it's not all about AI, digital technology, but actually getting in and working with your hands and so on, and really, perfecting things the way you need to. Well, since we are coming near the end of our program, I just wanted to take this time, first of all, and thank Ryan and Bianca for their time today, their presentation. It was so informative and so interesting to hear about the great work you're doing. And I'd also like to thank the Office of Volunteer Programs and all of the folks who attended today. I hope you found this session very enjoyable and informative as well. And then now we'd like to share a slide to sort of give you a little bit of information about ways you might get involved. I know Ryan was able to put up some things earlier, but Heather Winfield, who is on the Zoom now, will be delighted to follow up with any of you that have questions or interest in learning more about the great work that Ryan and Bianca are doing. And feel free to reach out to her. You can see with this information here. And we'd be happy to have a conversation with you about, supporting OriginLabs. Again, we were just happy that you took the time to join us. We know you all are very busy. It's pre-holiday, Memorial Day, so I hope you all have an opportunity to recharge and enjoy. And then finally, I'd want to say, some of you probably are aware that we have a Noontime Knowledge in July that will focus on the Millennium Scholars Program. And we are actually celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Millennium Scholars Program this fall on campus. So if some of you'd like to come back for that, we'd be delighted to send you some information on the Millennium Scholars Program. So we look forward to seeing you there too. And finally, again, we're delighted you took the time to join us. And if there's any questions that you have, volunteer programs, Heather, Ryan, Bianca, et cetera, even myself, we'd be delighted to follow up with you. Have a wonderful week, a great Memorial Day holiday, and we look forward to seeing you back at Penn State soon.